Hey, team. Welcome back to another incredible episode of the Intentional Agribusiness Leader podcast. This is your host, Mark Jewell, and today I am joined by Mr. Duane Simpson. He is the CEO of the National Council of Farmer Cooperatives, and I'm excited to dive in and see what wisdom he's got to share with us today. Duane, welcome to the show.
Well, Mark, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, man, you've got a kind of a historic background in the ag industry. You've been through some things. I hope we get to learn a little bit about some of that today. Well, we also get to learn about NCFC. But let's give you the same opening question everybody gets, which is, what does it mean for you to be intentional?
I think it's pretty much in the definition of the word. But when I'm working with my team in particular, and then of course with our board of directors, I think not only about what I'm going to say and how it's going to be, how it's going to land, but I really want to make sure I think about the moment itself, and be very intentional to make sure that on big moments, big things, that I'm thinking about what is it I want people to come away with, how is it I want them to feel, what's the the taste, the smell, the touch, the whole thing, and so to me, that's what intentionality is all about.
So good, man. So good. It reminds me of a conversation we had with a consultant recently. We hired somebody to help us work through our client experience from start to finish, from the day they become a customer, the contract is signed, like what happens next, and then what happens next. And the constant question, and this relates to your definition of what you said here, the constant question that he's asking us is, what do you want them to feel? What do you want them to know? And what do you want them to do?
Yeah, that's a good framework. My whole take on this is, when you first start being a leader, you spend time thinking about what is it you have to tell people, or what is it that you want to get feedback from on them, but you
Yeah.
don't spend time thinking about the how do you want them to feel part of it. And when you take that next step in that journey, and you begin to start thinking about how are people going to respond, how are they going to feel about what you're saying, that's when
Hmm.
you really start seeing, you know, it's geometrical how exponential type of responses to what you're doing, if you're really being thoughtful about those things.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it. It is an interesting thought. And I can see, we don't have time to probably go deep into this just yet, but I can see people's minds getting stuck. I'm like, well, how do I make them feel? I know what I want them to know, and I know what I want them to do, but what are they going to feel in that
I,
situation?
I can give an example if that helps.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, please.
So we recently had, I'm new in a CEO role, and as most CEOs, you have some turnover, and had two employees announce they were leaving within a couple of days of each other.
Mm,
And when we were bringing the team together, I wanted to, I thought about how I wanted to announce it to the team, and what I wanted the team to hear, and what I wanted them to think about, and what I wanted them to feel. And I came away with, I want them to hear how happy and proud I am of the person that's leaving, about their new opportunity, and excited for them. So I
mm,
wanted this to celebrate them. I
yeah.
wanted them to hear that we were sad to lose them, and that we would miss them. But
Hmm.
then I wanted the team to hear and feel that we're going to be okay. And
Hmm.
so it was three very deliberate messages, but I was very deliberate about, I know I'm talking to it, and saying something really nice about the person leaving, but I also want to make sure that everybody else understands what that feeling is like, for how we manage when people come to and leave the team. And so it was really deliberate about making that feeling of, hey, we all are happy for this person. We're all obviously going to miss them, but it's going to be okay. We're going to be fine, and we're going to be able to build from here. And so that was being very deliberate about that. So it's not just the message, but making sure when people walk out the door, that they feel good about where we're at and where we're going.
Awesome. I love it. Good stuff. Really good insight. And for those of you listening, you just got a whole day's worth of like leadership training right there. People will pay to go just learn that framework and learn those things. So take it and apply liberally. Duane, give us an idea. I mean, for those of us that don't know, or maybe are less familiar with the National Council of Farmers Cooperatives, there's over 1,700 cooperatives that are members of your organization, and I think by and large we're probably all familiar with what most of your large ag cooperatives and that system is like, but I'm sure it extends beyond that. So yeah, the floor is yours. Tell us about your organization. Who do you serve?
Sure. So NCFC, the National Council of Farmer Cooperatives, represents the business and policy interest of America's farmer-owned cooperatives. So a farmer-owned cooperative is an ag business that is owned by farmers. It's managed by farmers. They're the board of directors, and it's for the benefit of farmers. And so those three things together, we represent primarily our membership is smaller than the 1,700, but we represent all 1,700 farmer-owned cooperatives. We primarily represent the bigger federated cooperatives and the farm credit space there. But it's every part of agriculture, if you include the owners and what they do, that comes from fresh cut flowers to fruits and vegetables to dairy, meat, poultry, eggs, to the farm supply companies that you think of as the CHS or Growmark, those types, to the like I said, the farm credit piece and CoBank and that part of it, livestock, I mean, you name it, we have it. And then we have CPG brands. So companies like Welch's, Sunsweet, Sunmade, Ocean Spray, Florida's Natural, those types of brands that are farmer owned, and they sell the product into the grocery stores.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. And so what's the day today? I mean, just walk us through DC these days as we're going through a very interesting time. So as we record this, we're I think within 4 or 5 days of the new food pyramid. So there's an interesting thing that's coming out of DC from the food end of things. I'm sure there's got to be some things obviously that you guys have been dealing with around tariffs and stuff this past year that have impacted many of your members. What's getting the lion's share of your attention as we go into early Q1 2026?
The number one thing that's impacting everything ag related is the farmer balance sheet. Farmers are in a tough space right now. It's been a really hard year. Some of that's policy related, some of it is economics related. And so that's probably the number one issue. And within that, there are two big buckets of things that we are working on: ways to lower cost for farmers and ways to increase markets. So on the lowering cost side is things like ag labor, it's tariffs on inputs, on the growing the demand side is things like year-round E15. It's improving trade markets around the world. It's the new food pyramid that you just talked about, and getting more meat consumption, more dairy consumption, more whole fruits and vegetable consumption into the American diet. That will obviously increase more domestic demand. And so it's a number of different policy pieces that we can pull on, but the whole goal here is to raise the demand for American grown food and businesses that are owned by farmers, and to lower the cost that associated with doing that business. You do both of those, you help the balance sheet of the American farmer.
You bet. The question popped into my mind after the new food pyramid came out. And first of all, just so I don't know, everybody know, I think everybody that listens to the show will know for the most part where I come from. I mean, we're big into the biohacking and the health and in this house. And, we sauna and we cold plunge and we pay attention to what we put into our bodies. That may not be everybody's thing. It is our thing. We've had several people on the show that are on both sides of that conversation. But as it came out, right, I was like, okay, it makes a big headline and it makes RFK look like he's getting done, what he wanted to do. And it makes Trump look good because he said he was going to get it done. And it would just think about, like, what is the everyday American, right?
Right.
Like looking at and experiencing, like, so I look at it from that lens. And then I'm like, yeah, like, what is this really doing for the farmer, right? What is this really doing for my industry? And then I got to think that, I mean, there's got to be some trickle down into school food programs and other things that do actually impact us, isn't there?
Yeah. So if you think about what the dietary guidelines are for, and they re-up them about every 5 years, but the
Mhm.
dietary guidelines are then used by a number of entities, whether it's what they serve you food when you're in the hospital, what the
Yeah.
VA serves, what what goes into school lunches, what goes into, what is going to be eligible for WIC and SNAP payments, the women and children, and
Hmm.
women, infant, and children, or the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program.
Yeah.
All of those things tie back to the dietary guidelines. And so having the dietary guidelines put more of an emphasis on protein, having the dietary guidelines put more of an emphasis on whole fruits and vegetables, and in all forms, not differentiating between fresh versus dried or frozen. Putting that at the forefront, healthy fats and those types of things back into the forefront and saying, look, this is good for you. It's going to change where the government spends money. It's going to change Americans' diet.
Hmm.
That's the first piece. But the other piece is that a lot of people pay attention to, and they eat according to what they're told that they should, and what a healthy diet is. And
Right.
I don't know that I agree with everything that's in there, but
Mhm.
most of what they've done, a lot of it's common sense,
Yeah.
and most Americans understood that intuitively, but it wasn't what the guidelines were. We still have
Mhm.
questions about fortified food. They didn't address, when they talk about refined grains, we fortify bread in the U.S. We fortify flour, so things like that are really important. Um, they had some recommendations around juice that I don't think are fully supported by the science. Of watering down your juice, drinking less juice, and then they also had some questions around natural oils, healthy oils on
Mhm.
seed oils that only showed up in the appendix. But again,
Mhm.
the appendix matters, and so
Yeah.
it's the details that matter. But the big picture, I think we're pretty good for agriculture by and large.
Yeah.
American farmers should be relatively pleased with what they saw.
Very good. Very good. It's I appreciate your insight and opinion on that because it certainly helps me frame up like um, how this impacts. I've been waiting to ask you that question for a few days, knowing that this interview was coming up. Like, I bet Duane knows, because I don't, I'm not involved in it, and I know how it impacts my family. We look at it and we're like, okay, well, that was years ago. We decided to eat that way, and we've done that based on um, personal choice, right?
Yeah, and if
And
you're depending on how old you are, you remember the four food groups in the circle, and then it went to a pyramid, and then now the pyramid's been inverted and it's
yeah,
going the other direction. And all of these things change. There's politics involved. It shouldn't be. It should be based on what
yeah,
science, the best science is, and I think that they've done a reasonably good job of focusing on what do we know today to be the best, healthiest thing to do. And look, eating real food, that's a good thing for farmers.
I think that's what my mom taught me. That's what we grew up doing. Maybe we did it because we were poor. I mean, you could just eat what we produced, right on our place. But man, yeah, that's very cool. So, let's talk about some of the other things impacting, if we can, really quickly. And then I want to spend some time having everybody get to know you and the
Sure.
organization a little bit more too. But I mean, you talked about a few other things that are impacting the farmer balance sheet. What's the other one or two that are maybe get the lion's share of
Well,
your
let's
mind?
let's look at the cost side. I mean, I think the
Yeah.
biggest cost driver that is something that can actually be impacted by policy is ag labor. Um, you
Hmm.
know, it's both the availability of ag labor and the affordability from a policy standpoint. Agriculture has the H-2A labor
Yep.
visa that you can use. It's only available to temporary labor. It's not available to year-round labor. So, like a dairy doesn't have
Hmm.
access to it.
Yep.
So there's opportunity there, but statute would probably have to change to expand that. But there's also rules tied to how you get those visas, the what you have to pay in order to get them done. It costs a lot more to use an H-2A laborer than it does, a local domestic laborer, and people think incorrectly that this is done to increase or to save money, right? But it really reality, it's about, hey, we just need to find somebody to get those crops out of the field, and
Hmm.
and you know if you go into California and they're picking fruits and vegetables, um, they're paying laborers over $20 an hour. We're paying H-2A laborers in California and Oregon more than we pay privates in the Army. And so if
Wow.
you think, 40 some percent of people that serve in our nation's armed forces come from rural America,
Mm.
this isn't that we're not paying enough. It's that this is work that people don't want to do. They would rather do other things. And
Right.
and and I understand that. I get it. I sent my kid off to college. She wants to be a dentist. She's not going to go learn to pick oranges or what have you. And so, that's the American dream. Unfortunately, that means that we have to have a steady supply of labor that is trying to get onto that first rung of the American dream,
You bet.
and that's a huge policy piece. And the other big cost driver is the impact of tariffs on inputs. So
Hmm.
the president did pull back the tariffs on fertilizer,
Yep.
so which is really helpful. But the tariffs on steel have an impact on agriculture. Just one example, it's actually one of my favorite ones is with peaches. We import peaches from China and we grow peaches in California for canning. The tariff on peaches from China is 67%. The tariff on steel is 50%.
Mm.
But steel makes up twice the cost of the peaches inside a canned peach. So if you import a canned peach, $1 worth of canned peaches from China, you're paying
Mhm.
67 cents in tariff. But that same peaches in the U.S., they paid $1 or they paid more than that for in tariffs for the can itself. And so because the steel
Sure.
in the U.S. with
Wow.
the tariffs has
Yeah.
gone to things like cars now, and so we have to import steel to make the can. And so
Right.
now we're paying more to can it in the U.S. and that manufacturing, it raises the cost here and it makes it harder for those businesses that do that. And that's just one example. And they're all over the economy. It's not that the
Yeah.
president's plan is wrong. He wants to increase U.S. steel production, but we've created an imbalance where the American grown food, American canned food that is
Hmm.
getting on the shelf is competing against Chinese food that's coming in cheaper. And it's not well
Right.
labeled. It's like a little bitty stamp on the top of the can that nobody sees that it's not grown in the U.S.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's pretty wild. So I think there's, obviously there's the macro effort, which I think probably most of my audience will largely concur with. I'm not vouching for everybody, but for the most part, I think like we get that. It's a correction. It's an America First policy, and we certainly understand that. But then, yeah, we don't really see like, oh, no, you're buying extra steel. You're
Right.
paying more for the steel than you are for the peach.
And look, when you're in the grocery store, you're only about 13 cents on the dollar is going to the farm anyway, right? And so
Yeah.
the cost
Yeah.
of transportation, if we bring down the cost of transportation through bringing, lowering the cost of energy, that's going to have a huge impact on grocery prices. We don't have to drive down the cost of beef, at the packer. We
Yeah.
lower the cost of transportation. Those things you can help bring down those beef costs, and American ranchers can continue to benefit from high
Yeah.
beef prices. I mean that's where we're working with the administration. They understand it. The difficulty is it's the nuances that matter. It's the big policy is important. The president is right. We have been abused around the
Mhm.
world by other countries, especially when it comes to agriculture, where we can't get into markets. It has nothing to do with tariffs. And the
Mhm.
leverage the United States has is to use tariffs in order to open those markets back up for us. It's primarily about manufacturing, but it's also about agriculture, and those non-tariff trade barriers need to come down. And the president's doing the right thing there. And I think your listeners and most farmers out there agree with the president. Now they've been hurt by that because the retaliation is against agriculture, but that's temporary. And so
Mhm.
that's why the administration put the bridge payments in place. I think that they need to Congress probably needs to come in and supplement that. But that's temporary as you're trying to get from one policy to the new policy, and it's always going to cause
Mhm.
disruption. The administration gets that; they're trying to adjust for that, but the end goal is the right end goal, and they're going to the right place.
You bet. What should we look at in the next 6 months? Like, what do you see coming? In that arena, whether it's to help protect the balance sheet a little bit more, or any other big policy initiatives or shifts that we should be
Yeah,
aware of.
no, that's a great question. The next 6 months is probably the last time Congress is going to do anything before the midterm elections. So this is really the important opportunity. It's getting less and less likely that they're going to finish the farm bill. That would do things like update the farm credit, um, you know, levels to the research title, the conservation title. It would be
Mhm.
good if we got that done. I don't know if we will. I mentioned Congress needs to probably put some more money into the bridge payments. That would be helpful. We're about to get the $1 billion for specialty crops. How that's going to be divvied up, that's supposed to come here in the next few weeks. We'll see that. That'll be really important. Those are the big issues. There's a labor bill that G.T. Thompson, the chairman of the House Ag Committee, has that may address some of the ag labor issues. So things are moving in the right direction. And then on tariffs, we got a Supreme Court that's likely to rule on tariffs here in the next week or two, and the outcome of that's going to have a huge impact on everything around the world. I don't think if the president loses that tariffs are going away. I think they're just going to find a different way to get to the same outcome.
Mm-hmm.
I would prefer to have some certainty and get to a place where we know what's happening rather than the president having to scramble and find a new way to do what he's done for the last year. The volatility and uncertainty is more harmful to the economy than the individual tariffs are. And, that's probably the biggest piece.
Yeah, very, very interesting. All right, I want to go super futuristic real quick and just see if, and I'm curious if anything comes across your desk. Of listening to the Moonshots podcast here recently, which is a show that I take in regularly to stay apprised of what's coming in the advent of technology, AI development, robotics, and so on and so forth. Do we see this as a potential solution for ag? We're talking if you're looking at Elon's projections in 3 to 5 years, we've got basically a fully autonomous robotic workforce. Let's assume that his projections are aggressive. But there will be machines and robots, and things are getting very, very good very, very quickly. We can do things just with AI from an agentic standpoint today that we couldn't do. My proposal writing, when I'm on a sales call today, and my proposal is 98% written before I get done with the sales call. Right. And that used to be a 5 to 10 hour process on the backside, given the magnitude of the deal size that we typically have. And so it's certainly I'm saving a lot of time just from a knowledge work standpoint. Any thoughts on what we see coming that can help out on the labor side?
Look, I am never going to question Elon Musk's ability to predict the future. He's done more of that successfully than I'll ever do in a lifetime.
Yeah.
It sounds aggressive. I don't know that it is. He's probably on the right path, but the timelines, he always pushes the timelines a little fast. Mm-hmm. Do I see this in agriculture? Look, the pace of change is phenomenal. What I like to talk to leaders about is you need to think about being adaptable, and you need to think about resilience. And so how is your business going to be adaptable to this future as it's coming? Mm-hmm. And how are you going to be resilient to, are you going to be pushed out of business? Because some disruption is going to happen. And who and where and how that's going to be, I don't know. Look, we've had automation in agriculture for decades. The tractors drive themselves, right? I mean, this is not new to us. How much more automation we can do, I don't know. I've seen the videos of robots out swathing a wheat field, and it's like, look, whoever made this video has never been in a combine. They don't know. They don't know that we solved this problem. We solved this problem a couple generations ago. So some of this is we're already there. But I think that the software side of this is going to really make a difference. Mm-hmm. The way people market, the way people go about, when you are doing agronomy, I think that's going to be a huge piece of how people get the information that they need, and their trusted advisor, I think, is going to be more and more on a phone as it is, and there'll be fewer actual people that are walking your field, and you'll be able to take a picture and get that there. So I think that future is very near, if it's not now, but it is going to disrupt everything, not just agriculture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I agree with you about that. I mean, it's getting very good. In fact, we have a new tool that we're rolling out to some of our customers this very week that it takes into account their entire product portfolio, the entire grower buyer history, and it helps that agronomy seller write their recommendations and puts it into a pre-call plan. One of the biggest frustrations that my sales managers who we work with who have had about sellers over the years is how do we get them to do a better job asking questions? How do we get them to do a better job of being better consultants, making better recommendations when maybe I've got a 2-year-old, a 2-year seller, a 1-year seller who just doesn't know yet,
Yeah.
right? How do we get them better faster?
Well, and that's where people have to think about how you use technology. It's what is the human role in the technology, and that's the
Exactly.
piece that's going to really make the difference. I was having dinner or lunch yesterday with folks from Welch's Grape Juice, and they were talking about sustainability, and the number one problem that they have with farmers adopting sustainability is the 20 minutes worth of paperwork that they have to do for the downstream person. And whether it's a Walmart or whoever it is that's wanting that.
Yep.
That little bit of paperwork is going to become automated. Somebody is going to figure out how to take whatever is happening in that field and fill out the paperwork and get that sent over to them to where a farmer doesn't have to leave their tractor, go into their farm shop and sit down and fill out forms and then make
Yep.
sure that they got it all right and send it off in order to get those bonuses. That's the type of thing that's really exciting about where the opportunity lies.
Yeah. I'm not bullish on the idea that humans are going to get replaced, but I do think humans that use the technology, as has been proven time and time again by humans that use technology, right? The humans that figure out how to do it better, faster, cheaper, more effectively, more efficiently, whatever the case may be, like they're the one, they're going to dominate. So I think there's a for both of our memberships, so to speak, which I know there's a lot of overlap in there. They figure it out, and
And
also
AI brings up the bottom a lot faster than it raises the top too. So what it's going to do is it's going to you think
really
any
good.
technology. You think about construction, the artisan who can do amazing stonemason work by hand or whatever. That person isn't as needed anymore because a computer can do it for you and a machine can do it for you. But the
Yeah.
one who does is still going to be valued. So that person at the very top with the high skills is going to be valued, but they're not gaining as much value from the software. But it's the people at the bottom that are the D and C employees that are going to become B and A minus employees, and that's what's
Mm.
really exciting. Is it's going to really level up, your workforce.
Yeah. What I find really, really interesting about this is it's like if you're just using it to process your email faster or something like that, that's cool. Like, but that's kind of like kindergarten. Like, but what I'm finding is the people who are really advancing and can go from being a D to a B plus player in a day, basically. I'm not even over exaggerating when I give you that timeline. It's really good if you're really good at asking questions,
Yeah.
right? The quality of the prompt is what dictates the quality of the outcome. And if you can be really good at that, and by the way, if they're a D player, probably kind of lazy. So AI becomes the perfect way to take somebody who struggles a little bit, and I know this firsthand. I mean, there's just certain areas that I love to go work in, and certain areas that I don't, and I've used it to solve the areas that I don't, so that it takes almost none of my time.
Yeah. But at the same time, the personal touch is always going to matter. I mean,
Exactly. Yeah.
I spent about 30 minutes this morning writing handwritten thank you notes. Um, you know, AI can help you build the content for that thank you note, but a handwritten note is always, always, always going to have a bigger impact than an email that comes in that may or may never be
Yep.
read.
Yep. We're very bullish on the people on what we believe will be people's desire to get back in person. Again, I think the pendulum swung way the other direction. From the COVID timeframe, the COVID era, where we went heavy Zoom, heavy Teams, heavy online everything, and we're seeing a deeper desire for people to get back in person for meetings like trainings and things like that today. And that's kind of table stakes. But there's the other stuff like where do we take our team once a year? How do we get our team together in a remote world, a virtual world? Executives wanting to get off grid and things like that. So we're seeking property right now in Western North Carolina, Eastern Tennessee, somewhere to build our future event center, right? Where we can bring people out and like check phones at the door and get off the grid and chop wood, carry water, sleep in, rest up, work out, eat good food, and get recalibrated because we're so connected all the time that it's going to be time to
Well,
disconnect.
technology cannot replace human connection.
Yeah.
And the good thing about being in agriculture and agribusiness is that this is probably one of those businesses that's going to come last to the getting away from human connection. We
Yeah.
appreciate a handshake. We appreciate seeing someone in person. We appreciate breaking bread with one another. And so that's
Yeah.
something that I really love about this business. And I think that technology is never going to replace that.
Yeah. 100%. And for sure. Good stuff, man. But thanks for letting me go down that rabbit hole with you a little bit on the
Sure.
AI thing. Because I think, I mean, it's one of those things that obviously is directly impacting our space, and I think a lot about the ag retail arena, the cooperative space, whether it's independent or co-op. From looking across the broad scope of our customers, we've got about 40, 50 co-ops, between 40 and 50 active co-ops on our roster at any given time right now, and there's about 25 to 30% of the workforce that's set to retire in the next 3 to 5 years, right? And so how do you look to replace that when we already have a bit of a talent gap? And I'm asking some of my leaders, how much of that stuff are you just automating right now? And I don't have the answer for that. I'm not going to share what anybody's saying, but I'm hearing some varied answers everywhere, from we're just not rehiring for that position, or we're consolidating those roles and automating a lot, and things like that. So
Yeah. I don't anticipate that you're going to see fewer employees at these facilities, though. I
exactly,
think
yeah.
what's going to happen is that you're going to automate the roles that used to be done, and then you're going to find new important value opportunities for those for that you're going to be having to hire for at the same time.
Exactly.
And it's
Yep.
not different. The trade association space in the 1980s, they ran big print shops, and
Yep.
we would print out newsletters and we would mail them all over the country. And we would have, then they went to blast faxes, and then you went to emails, and to the point where you're
Yep.
doing things by text and by phone. Now, the person that has to do the communications shop has gotten smaller, but then you've been able to supplement that with additional members of your lobbying team, or additional
Yep.
members of an event planning team. And so those things will go in cycles. It's true of every business out there that some of that technology is going to replace. We don't all have an administrative assistant sitting out typing up our handwritten notes anymore. That's going to take care of itself. But we're gonna find new needs for those for employees, and we'll be hiring for those.
Big time. I agree. I read a book a few years ago. It's called "The Future is Faster Than You Think," and what Peter Diamandis said in there is, with every advent of technology over the last 20 years, every time we think that we've eliminated everybody's job with the internet or technology or whatever, it actually creates 2.6 more.
The
It's
personal computer is a great example, right? What
100%.
happened, and what reality was versus what people thought happened.
Yep, yep, exactly. Okay, well, I think just because of the world that we see, I mean, it's intentional leadership is so much more important than maybe it ever has been. It's never not been important, but there's just such a volume of distraction and things and noise and headlines and stuff that's going on, that I know you're right in the thick of it there, up in the Beltway area. So I know that but before we close it down, I would love to learn just a little bit more about your background, Duane. Like, how did you get here? Let's
Sure.
start with that. Yeah.
So I'm originally from Kansas, Kansas City, and my mom was the last one in my family that grew up on the farm. We still have the Century Farm in our family in Jetmore,
Cool.
Kansas, and another one in Larned. One from right before the Civil War and one from right after. So I mean,
Oh wow. Yeah.
family still farms that land. I went to school in Western Kansas, got involved in politics there, worked on a congressional campaign for a state senator who's now a U.S. senator, but went to Topeka instead of to Washington, and worked in the state legislature for 8 years. Went from
Oh
there
wow.
to the grain industry as a trade association lobbyist. When Monsanto hired me from there,
Hmm.
and then I did state government relations for 8 years, and then led the team for two more. And then Bayer bought Monsanto, and I moved to Washington to integrate those teams. And so I've had a phenomenal career until here, with a couple of big multinational corporations in this space. I was a member of Bayer's leadership team for the business for from 2018 until I left in June. So I've seen a lot of interesting things over that time. Um,
Yeah.
when I left, we had Canada, the US, Australia, New Zealand in the portfolio, and we were doing cross functional license to operate work across um, government relations, industry affairs,
Wow.
stakeholders, sustainability, stewardship, legal, regulatory, all those things, bringing them together, doing what's best for the business, and trying to make sure that we're driving public policy and all of those different parts, to benefit our company and our customers.
That's fantastic. And it's a lot to keep straight.
I've been blessed. It's a career. Look, I didn't plan any of it. I just kept saying yes when
Yeah,
people put an opportunity in front of me, and
sure.
it's been it's interesting for the intentional leader. I put plans together, and they never worked out as to what I was going to do next.
Right.
But that's okay. I've the one thing I've been willing to do, and I've been blessed. My wife has given me the rope to do it. Is
Sure.
get in front of create your own opportunities, and when somebody is interested in giving you a chance to say yes, and that's what
Mhm.
we've done. And and here I am now. So it's been a fantastic ride.
I love it. So good. Do you have any favorite books or podcasts or resources that have been helpful in your development?
Yeah. So I read lots of books. So you were talking about you've talked about your the work that you do. I the five dysfunctions of a team. That's a seminal work. I think a lot of people. And Patrick Lencioni, that's a huge deal. But the one that I think is most important to me, and I actually have it on my shelf here. It's "The Power of Moments" by Chip and Dan Heath,
Yeah, I
and
love that book. Yeah.
it's really all about how do you how do you create that moment? How do you be very thoughtful that it's just a handful of moments in time that people are going to remember you by, and so or how they're going to feel, what they're going to do. That to me is probably as good of a book for an aspiring leader, somebody who wants to be more intentional. That book is going
Mhm.
to do as much as anything. And if you're teaching a class on being an intentional leader, that should be required reading.
Big time. I will. We're going to add that to the library. So our new product Jericho has a resource library in it, and for those that are working on their leadership skills, we put different resources in there. So we link up to Amazon where they can go get the book, and so we're going to put that in the or in the Jericho resource library. So those that are using our software will actually get that assigned to their growth plans.
Oh, that's
So
good. I travel a lot for work, and so I always have two
sure.
books in my bag when I'm on an airplane. And so I'm constantly reading. People send me books. I send them to friends, and it is a it. I People have gotten away from reading.
Yeah.
I think that's a mistake. I love podcasts. I listen to podcasts every time I'm in the car. But the reading, when you get time, when you've got a large break of time, especially if you're on an airplane, it's a great time
Yeah.
to really let your mind think about something other than the current P&L or what you have to do tomorrow, but really think the big thoughts that are necessary in order to be a leader.
Yeah, I agree, man. And I think when you look at habits of highly effective people, not to go down the rabbit hole of Stephen Covey's habits of highly effective people, but just habits that I see in successful people is they actually take time to think and read. And if you think about it this way, I mean, just if you can read 10 pages, which probably is 10 minutes or less, right? Maybe 15 minutes or less for those of us who are slow readers in a day, right? And everybody can chisel out 15 minutes. Don't tell me you can't. Thing. It allows your brain the opportunity to expand and even rest a little bit because I think we've abused our brains and our eye sockets a little bit by being on these screens all the time, right?
I mean, if you
So
think about what a lot of people do at night, and I catch myself doing it sometimes too, is you turn on TV,
yeah,
you maybe are watching something on Netflix or you're watching a ball game, and you got your phone out and you're scrolling social media at the
yeah,
same time, and maybe your spouse is sitting on the chair next to you doing the same thing. Um,
yeah,
you're not learning anything. You're not improving yourself, and you need that. You need those things. But going out and going for a walk is probably as good of a use of your time. You can listen to a podcast, you can go with somebody and have a conversation. Those are probably a better use of your time than doom scrolling through social media.
Yeah, I'm 100% agree. Great book recommendation. So Chip and Dan Heath, The Power of Moments. That's good. I actually have it upstairs on the bookshelf. So it's that's one that I read, and it's very well written. It's an easy, like it's enjoyable for your brain to
It's a
read.
1 or 2 flight read. That's how I measure everything. So,
Yeah. How much flight time to the Midwest and back do I
exactly.
do I have on this book? So, man, Dwayne, this has been a fun interview. Thank you. We went very, very wide ranging, and I'm grateful for it. Thanks for bringing us up to speed on some current policy things and what's going on in DC, food pyramid, tariffs, costs, all that good stuff. And so, I would love to have you back on, and maybe do it in 6 months so we can talk about what's happened and what's coming again. So,
Sounds great, Mark. I appreciate the opportunity and happy to come back anytime.
you bet. Thanks for being on.
Thank you.